All right, I'm here with my goodie bag. This is the every other week type of episode of this show where I go through all my, about 10 or 12 of my most recent blog posts, which I'm calling the Daily Goody. And of course, you can see them and subscribe to them at podcastengineeringschool.com. But welcome to the show. Normally, when I do guest interviews, I play music and I play my little sidekick, Barry. Well, he's not little. Barry's bigger than me, and his voice is huge. But every other week, I do interviews, and you can hear those kinds of episodes. And this is basically a roundup of my Daily Goody. So before I jump into the topics, just make sure you know that April 16th is when the next semester of Podcast Engineering School starts. Yeah, and there's really good pricing available now. So if you've ever considered learning the real hardcore, fundamentals and tips and tricks of an audio engineer to produce podcasts, that's what the course is. And of course, that's the reason this show exists, by the way, is to help you and everyone, all of us, understand better about how to produce podcast episodes that are professional sounding or as best as they can be. Right? Because we know a lot of podcast guests, they don't have a real mic and they sound like, they don't sound good. And then we have to do our magic to make them sound good, right? So anyway, podcastengineeringschool.com. So our first Daily Goody we're going to talk about is, I'm on the wrong webpage. I'm on Jennifer Longworth's post. Anyway, that was last episode. I hope you were able to listen to that. I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of people were commenting about that episode on Facebook, actually. So, okay, processing a voice that is extremely dynamic. This was the Daily Goody from today. Today's January 30th. Although, of course, this episode is going to come out tomorrow, which is the 31st. So, processing a voice that is extremely dynamic. Now, what does that mean? Dynamic means that the level of the recorded signal gets really loud, and then the level gets really low, and it's just an extreme. It's really loud and peaking, and then it gets really low, like it's almost inaudible. Like if I was to scream really loud and then like whisper, like that's dynamic range. And some people and the way some people use microphones, it makes their voice extremely dynamic. And the problem with an extremely dynamic voice is that, like, if someone's listening to that voice and they're in a loud environment, like driving in a car or working out at the gym, like when the voice is loud, the listener can hear it, no problem. But when the voice gets really low, then they can't hear it above the background noise. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. So anyway, the last episode with Jennifer Longworth, her raw track was very dynamic, and I actually had to go. I had to do some serious compression on her voice to make it more even, to make it sound even, right? So in this post, I kind of tell you what I did, which was first I used a compressor with a fast attack and a fast release, and that was first in the chain. That was just to reel in the really loud laughs, because at times she would laugh really loud, and that's great. But in terms of mixing, you got to reel those in. Like they can't be way too loud. They have to. They'll still come off as loud, but the level won't be as high. Right. That's the difference between perception of what you're hearing and then what the wave looks like on the screen. Those are two different things. Perception and what the wave looks like, right? So, all right, then I added a bit of EQ. Then I had another compressor, but with a longer release. More of a normal release, I would say. Probably, a couple hundred milliseconds, something like that. Then, next in the chain was a multi-band compressor. Because what happens when someone is very dynamic, or especially if they're, even more so if they're like drifting on and off the mic, like if someone's talking and they drift off the mic and then they come back on the mic and then they drift off the mic and then they come back on the mic, like the frequencies in the signal are very different when they're speaking right into the mic versus when they're off the mic. So if you use a multi-band compressor, it helps even out those frequency differences. There's more to say on that, but this is just an quick overview episode. So, and then last in the chain for Jennifer Longworth's voice was the Vocal Rider, which is a really cool plugin from Waves, which automatically rides the vocal. So if she starts talking softly, the Vocal Rider will push the level up. And the other way too, if she gets really loud, it'll just pull it down a little bit, just make it not so loud. Does a really good job of evening it out. So between 3 compressors and the Vocal Rider, I evened her out pretty good, and maybe even too much. I don't know. I think it was. Did I listen to the episode after it was published? And I was kind of thinking her voice sounded very compressed, but in a way it had to be, because if it wasn't very compressed, then it would have been too dynamic. And look, it's a tightrope you're walking, right, between too much compression and not enough compression. So, okay, next post from the day before. We're going to go back in time from the present back for the past 12 or 13 days. Okay, this Daily Goody was titled, "One Great Feature of the RE320 Microphone." One great feature. You know what that one great feature is? A strong output level. Yeah, the RE320 has comparatively speaking, has a very strong output level compared to other mics. So that's good. That means you don't have to crank up your mic preamp as much, right? So that's good. Especially in the world of podcasting, where a lot of the microphone preamps that people are using are not great quality, because, people buy cheap stuff or cheaper equipment, and, the mic pre is just not that good. So if you're using a mic pre that's not that good, then using an RE320 helps, because the signal's louder already, right? You don't have to crank it so much with the mic pre. That's the idea. Okay, the next Daily Goody. Audio engineering fundamentals. Well, look, the fundamentals are so important, right? And so anyway, I wrote in this post a little bit about why the fundamentals are very important. And anyway, you can read the post. I can't. Wait, what did I say in this post? Oh, well, the first paragraph is, "It's difficult to drive a car unless you know what a gas pedal is, and what a brake pedal is, and what a steering wheel is. Yet, it's amazing how many podcasters aren't even aware of some of the most fundamental audio concepts." So that's, and I get it. Like, people and podcasters like, oh, you just download some software and hit record and talk into a microphone, and oh, you're engineering. You're a podcaster. Like, there's a lot more to it, right? Below the surface. And look, not everyone has to learn all that stuff. But if you want to get good, and if you want to sound better and better, then you got to learn the fundamentals. So we cover that in Podcast Engineering School. The whole first class is all fundamentals, literally. Starting with what is sound. It's awesome. I love going through the fundamentals. Okay, next Daily Goody. What should you charge to edit podcasts for others? And my first paragraph, it's a short one. A lot. That's what you should charge, a lot. Anyway, charging for editing podcasts, there's a lot that goes into that. And yeah, there's skill, there's availability, and there's also, your confidence level, right? Some people don't have any confidence level. They can't charge what they're worth. They just can't. Okay, we'll move on. Next Daily Goody. The simplified history of mastering. Well, this is a good post, because what is the mastering step and why does it exist? Well, it goes back to vinyl records. And when they were finalizing songs and cutting into the vinyl records, especially the low frequencies were too much. They would make the needle move too much, and it would just cut right through the vinyl record. And they're like, hey, man, we got to tame this low end. We got to tame this audio so it doesn't cut the vinyl record in half. So then they applied compression and some limiting and equalization. They took out a lot of the low end, actually. And so then they were able to cut the song into the record successfully. So anyway, that's where the mastering step came from. It's the final step. And yeah, I think most podcast producers don't, well, they do some sort of a mastering step. I guess the most popular one is probably like just putting your episode through Auphonic and having it level it to a certain LUFS level. I guess technically that's a mastering step. So, but there's a lot more to mastering as well. So, all right, next Daily Goody. The main danger when removing ums. What's the danger? Well, the danger is if you cut out an sometimes when you listen back to it, it sounds unnatural because you took out the So like they might take a breath in, like go, and then say, and then start the sentence. And if you take out the sometimes between the breath and the start of the sentence, it's a little weird. Sometimes it's too short. Like they'll take a breath and then just start talking, and it's like totally unnatural. So there's some tricks with taking out, and I actually mentioned in the post, one of the tricks is instead of deleting the you just silence it. And then the that you just silenced, you don't take out all of it. You take out like maybe 70 or 80% of it. So you're leaving a little bit of the silence in there, and that makes it not sound rushed when someone takes a breath and starts talking. That way it sounds natural. So, yeah. And just so you know, like when I'm talking about these daily goodies, like in this episode, I'm kind of going over it quick, but like my blog posts, even though they're short, they do explain these things a little better. So if I'm mentioning any of these daily goodies and you're like, I don't understand, or that doesn't make sense, go to the website, look, find the Daily Goody and read it. And then you can comment on it too. And you could be like one of those trolls too and just comment bad stuff and tell me how horrible of a person I am, right? You could do that too. Or you could send me a love note. All right, next Daily Goody. Balancing the levels of all the voices. All right, look, in most podcast episodes, there's more than one voice, right? There's usually a host and a guest. Well, balancing the levels of the host and the guest is like so fundamental. It's in the mixing step. You need to adjust the levels of these two people speaking so they're the same level. Because you know how annoying it is when one person's voice is really loud and the other one is softer. It's much, when there's a big difference in level, it's hard to listen to. It's weird. So balancing the levels is actually really important. Okay, next one. Good habits after recording sessions. Well, after recording sessions, what's the first thing you should do? Back up all files immediately. Yeah. And then, there's some other stuff you could do I talk about in this post. Yeah, and part of it's keeping your studio in a state of readiness. Like, so if you're doing a session and you change a bunch of settings and you use, you might use a different microphone or you might change stuff, like after that session, you should change everything back to the way it normally is. Like you should keep your studio, not that you should, but it's good to keep your studio in a state where you're very familiar with it. So you can just walk into your studio, even if your studio is literally just a table with your computer on it with a mic. When you go there, you know what the setup is already. You know how everything's already set up. And so then if you want to change it, you can change it. But you don't want to walk into your studio and be like, oh, where's my mic? Where's this? And, oh, did I change those settings? So if you ever do a session where you change a bunch of stuff, it can be really helpful to change it all back, put it all back to the way it normally is so that the next time you start a session, everything is back where it should be. So, all right, next one. Stopping and restarting your recording. Well, this one, I wrote this because I had a session. Well, I have sessions all the time where we'll start recording and then immediately there's a problem. Like someone drops off or somebody says, wait, hold on, or right? There's a million things that happen. And sometimes it takes a long time to fix those problems. Could take 5 or 10 minutes. Could take 20 or 30 minutes to fix a problem. So the question is, if we already started recording, and there's a problem, should I immediately stop the recording or should I let it roll? And I say, let it roll. Because you could fix the problem and then just start again, and then you just keep going and everything's recorded. You can edit that part out later, right? That's easy. Because stopping the recording, then you got to start a new recording. And one of the things, I was using Ringer and I couldn't figure out how to start a new recording from the one session. So I literally had to invite everyone back to a new Ringer session. It was terrible. I think now I know how to do it in Ringer. Some of the controls in Ringer are a little, not intuitive, sort of. I don't know. I mean, I like Ringer, and there's a big post I'm going to write about Ringer in a few days. It's already scheduled. But yeah, so, you got to, as the engineer, you have to decide, should I stop the recording or should I just let it roll? And most times you can just let it roll. But of course, look, if it ends up being 20 or 30 minutes and there's still problems, of course, then stop it, right? And then just solve your problems and then restart it. Okay, next one. Setting expectations with remote guests. Well, setting the expectations, mostly what I'm talking about in this post is communicating in advance how you're going to connect for the episode, how you're going to record, what they should have, like a microphone and headphones and stuff like that. Just communicate as much as you can, days or weeks before the episode. Just communicate everything to your guests so they can read stuff and then they'll know what to expect. You don't want the guests to show up that day, or worse, they don't know how to show up that day. All of a sudden, they're just not there, and then you got to find their phone number and call them, and then they're like, oh, well, I couldn't find any information. You need to avoid all that. Send them everything long in advance, and look, and even still, they might not read it, but at least it'll be in their email, so when the time comes, they can search for it and find it. Like when they're scrambling to connect to the episode, and they're like, where's the link? What do I do? How do I do it? They'll at least find that email, and at least at that time, they'll read it, and then they'll know, what to do and how to connect, right? Okay, next one. Software for each phase of production. So, right, there's different phases of production. Obviously, you got recording, you got mixing, you got editing, you got mastering, you got posting, tagging, and there's different software for all the different steps, and some software you can use in a couple different steps, but that's the gist of the post. Yeah. Okay. You can, if you want to read more about that, you can go read the post. Okay, next one. Oh wait. Did I cover this one? No, this one is called, I'm supposed to go back to January 18th. This post is called Table Tapping, Clicking Pens, and Squeaky Chairs. Table tapping, clicking pens, and squeaky chairs. Now look, those are three of the noises that happen all the time with people who don't understand recording. And most of the guests on podcasts, they don't understand anything about recording. So you have to tell them things and train them and instruct them, right? That's what you need to do. So these things are not hard to avoid. But again, you got to understand who you're dealing with and how to talk to them and tell them not to do these things, and tell them look, just sit, get comfortable and sit there and don't move, because these little sound, this makes it a nightmare to edit, right? It's crazy. It can be crazy. All right. January 18th. What day of the week was that? That was Friday. Okay. That's going to be our last one. Switches on microphones. Right? Now some microphones, they don't have any switches on them. Usually the most professional mics, well, a lot of the most professional mics, they don't have any switches. You just literally plug in the XLR. That's all. No switches. But some really professional mics do have switches, okay? And a lot of, lesser quality microphones, they do have switches. For instance, the ATR 2100, right? The really handy podcasting microphone. Well, it has an on-off switch. And one funny thing about that is I was starting to I'm going to write a post about that, so I'm not going to say, but it's about how to switch the on-off switch on a ATR 2100 or a Samson Q2U. They're very similar mics. The Samson Q2U is almost exactly the same as the ATR 2100, but yeah, and then there's other switches that can be there, like a bass roll-off, different pickup patterns, like the Blue Yeti. You probably all know the Blue Yeti has 4 different pickup patterns. There's a switch. You pick between 4 different patterns, and you got to know which one you're selecting and why. Some mics have a presence boost. Some mics have a mute switch. Well, that's what the ATR 2100 has, basically. It's an on-off switch, which is very handy. So, all right, that's it. Wow. Man, I rambled. It's like 21, 22 minutes. This is crazy. Well, thank you for joining me on this Chris's Daily Goody Bag episode. These come every other week. And of course, I forgot to say it in the beginning, but please understand that these are just quick topics. I'm bringing up a couple points. This isn't meant to teach you everything about audio engineering in the world ever in one 20-minute episode, all right? So please keep your expectations real. This podcast in general is just me hanging out talking shop about audio production, specifically podcast production. So, right? So don't, and I know most of you get it, but there's those people out there who are like, oh man, like those people, just don't be like that, please. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you can appreciate what I'm doing and sharing, right? I hope you do. Anyway, thanks for listening. Next week, guess who's going to be the guest on the next episode? Brad Hargis from The Cinema Guys. Seriously. There's his podcast is called The Cinema Guys, right? So, and they review movies. They talk about movies, right? So if you're into like movies and shows that, kind of review movies and talk about them, The Cinema Guys is a really good podcast. It's 3 hosts. They got really good chemistry together, and the sound is good because Brad does a good job. Anyway, he's on next week. We're going to talk all about his production and stuff. So might actually be cool. You might want to go listen to his show, listen to a few episodes. I still have to finish the episode on Aquaman. They did talk about Aquaman. But I thought I might see it, so I didn't want to get the spoilers. But now I know I'm not going to see it because I heard about it. Anyway, it'd be cool if you listen to a few, like 1 or 2 of their episodes, and then listen to my interview with him, right? Because then you'll know what we're talking about, and one of his co-hosts is Justin, and the other co-host is the Cinemaiden. Anyway, it's a good. Next week's episode is good. So. All right, thank you for listening. If you have any questions or if you need help with anything with your production, seriously, contact me. There's on the website, there's a contact page. Send me a note. Say hello. I'm here. I can help. All right, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.